there's been reports of a second bubble that is coming to Chicago. This bubble will have the 8 teams that did not make the 22-team format, who's competing for the championship. These rumors say that the bubble might be in early September, and there will be like summer league games with almost all players on the roster, all 15 players playing the game. So is the second bubble worth the risk?
I think it's tough to choose, but I would have to say a slight no. And uh, the bubble will help with two things: the salary cap and the development and on-court chemistry for these teams. And the salary cap, the reason it'll help the salary cap is because it won't take as hard of a hit if people watch the games, the second bubble games on TV, and that'll help the NBA so they can collect the TV money from the broadcasters, and that'll help with the salary cap situation with for a bunch of teams like the Warriors have who are well above the salary cap. That'll help a lot of teams when they're pursuing people in free agency, players in free agency. And along with this, I think some teams could use some more time to develop their players, like the Warriors and the Knicks, and to help with their on-court chemistry, like the Timberwolves. Because with the Timberwolves, D'Angelo Russell and Malik Beasley came there of late. They played less than 20 games with the Timberwolves, so I feel like they would be able to gel better if they get more experience and potentially do better next season. I would say that these are very worthwhile reasons to play in the second bubble, but as we all know, the risk of coronavirus is just too big of a concern for me.
Yeah, I think I don't really think it's worth the risk because you got to realize that the teams that are playing, it's the Hawks, the Timberwolves, Warriors, Pistons, Knicks. Those are all teams that are not those are teams that don't have star players. There's only there's players like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, but those players, the Warriors have said that they're not going to be playing, and the only good players that you'll be able to watch will be like D'Angelo Russell and Trey Young. So for the NBA, I don't think it's worth it financially because they won't be able to get enough money. And you also got to realize the timing in where when this is. This is in September, and this is when the playoffs will happen in Orlando for the other 22 teams. So more NBA fans will be watching those playoff games instead of these summer league games, if you say, because these players will play these games, and it's not worth anything. So, they're not going to make the playoffs or anything, and they're not going to win anything. So for them, it's just more of a chemistry thing, and for them to gel together. And you also got to realize the coronavirus that the cases are getting higher almost every day in America. So I don't know if you want to fly these players to Chicago, and if the players do get the coronavirus, you just cancel it and waste all that money.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Speaking of on-court and gelling, I know we'll talk about this in the weeks coming, but do you think that the Timberwolves or teams like the Timberwolves or that like recently traded for players, do you think that they need this time to gel? Is it necessary for them?
I think, yeah, I think they want this time because they have traded for a lot of players like D'Angelo Russell and Amari Spellman and other teams like the Atlanta Hawks who traded for Clint Capella. Those teams do might need time to get gel together because when in the off season it's basically only a month to sign players, and then training camp starts the very next week after free agency, and it's only about 2 weeks long before the season resumes. So I don't think that's enough time for those other teams, the 8 teams that did not make it, for them to gel together. But I think it's best not to have a bubble for now. It's safety wise.
Yeah, I think until the coronavirus cases lowers and the vaccine comes out, I don't think it's a good idea to have the second bubble either.
Yeah. So even though these games do not count and they have no meaning, some teams will be able to play their young players or get chemistry going for next season, like we mentioned. But who do you think will benefit the most from this bubble?
Well, if we're talking about the team, I know I've talked about them a lot this past segment, but I think it's the Warriors. And I think it's the Warriors because there really isn't another team to pick other than the Timberwolves. But I think the Warriors will benefit more from it than the Timberwolves because they're looking to compete for a title next year. And as most of us know, they don't have, aside from their star players, they don't really have good role players to play with um, in the season. And I think these games will allow these players a chance to prove themselves and show why they should be on the Warriors roster next season. And although a lot of people have ruled out Klay Thompson and Steph Curry coming back, Klay Thompson has said he's ready to return. And even though it's unlikely, if they do return, I think that can help with them being able to gel with these possible role players. And that's why I think the Warriors would be winners of the second bubble.
Yeah, I think teams with younger players and teams that have traded for other new players, like we just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that they will benefit the most because they will need to get their chemistry going together. They need to learn the plays, and for those teams like the Atlanta Hawks, the Golden State Warriors, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Detroit Pistons, those teams have all traded for players, and they need those players to really gel together for next season because next season is only about 3 months away, which is not that far. And you also got to realize that these the players that have traded for younger players that they will get more time playing together, like the Warriors. They traded or their players were hurt, like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. So other players got to step up, like Eric Pascal, Kai Bowman. Those players, it can help those players as they can become bench solid role players. Like you mentioned, they can be Warriors can be championship contenders next year, and that will really help the team. But like I said before, I don't think it's really worth the risk financially and health wise for those teams.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Do you think, like what I said before, do you think the Timberwolves would need this time to gel for D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns because those are the two stars on that team and they're already very good friends. Do you think that's the most important priority for some teams like them?
Yeah, I think they need to uh, really like know the system and know what to expect in every situation. And for those players, they at least they had training camp this past couple of weeks for those teams that did not make the playoffs. So at least they got that time. But I think it's really beneficial for them to play or scrimmage or something so that they can just learn to play and get chemistry going.
Yeah, I agree there. One last question for you. Do you think teams like the Cavaliers really need any of this time because it's not like they're really going anywhere in any specific direction and they haven't traded for any players? Do you think that they really need this second bubble?
Um, Teams like the Cavaliers, I mean, you saw after their coach John Beeline got fired that their record went up about five wins in less than 10 games. So that really helped them. And for them, they like you mentioned, like the team like the Warriors who have young players that those young players can really step up. Players like Alfonso McKinney, who's on that team, and other players who are struggling, like first round pick Darius Garland, who is not doing well, that they can improve their game in the bubble and just learn from other teams how they play.